Welcome to Strategies with Soul, my friends. It's Heidi Mitro here, and today's episode is for you if you are like me and a lover of the moon. Oh, I cannot wait to introduce to you I'm so excited. This guest is going to rock your world and the planet. So Kristina Wingeier, welcome to Strategies with Soul. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you so much for inviting me. And hello, beautiful community who already know Heidi. Thank you for meeting me. I appreciate it.
Yes, I'm excited.
Introducing me. They're meeting me. You're introducing me. It's that.
Yes. Well, and for those of you that have been with me for a while, you know that I geek out about stuff like this. You know me as someone who is a part of the Moon Club, and I have shared this with Kristina before that I love being called a moonbeam. And we'll give you some information at the end of the show as to how you can connect with Kristina, but we're going to jump right in. I've prepared some questions based on what I know of you, based on my experience inside your Moon Club. And yes, I am a moonbeam and you can be too. And it's phenomenal. But I'm so curious when your love affair with the moon started or with astrology. Like, do you have one of those moments?
Well, I remember being young and knowing I was a Gemini, and like some of the pop astrology around that sign really rubbed me the wrong way as a young person. And I was in probably early high school, when I kind of like found out that there was more than just your sun sign. And I found out about my moon sign. And for whatever reason, like I was really like, oh, my moon sign, like this helps me understand myself more. And so that was like when I first kind of got into like the moon astrologically. And, as I continued my studies and found out that I was a Cancer rising, the ruling planet for that sign is the moon, right? And so the moon is the leader of my chart. And so my love
Lucky.
for the moon. Oh, you got Venus. I mean, aren't
know,
you a Taurus
I know.
rising? That's pretty nice. At least she's a little
so
steadier. I mean, the moon, it fluctuates so much, and it's always changing. And that helped me understand my own kind of ebbs and flows and moony moods, because I am a deep feeler, and that's not always easy. And it's not always loved or accepted by, family I grew up in, for sure. And then society at large doesn't really get that. So the moon helped me understand myself better.
What a gift. And also, I think, okay, well, now I have more questions. So when you talk about your journey, you didn't start out as an astrologer though, right? Like
was I born an astrologer?
Well, you probably were.
I was.
That probably did actually happen. However, what was
how did I get into it?
How'd you get into it?
Well, I've been studying astrology since I was in high school, and on my own, just like, this is so interesting, right? And learning, reading books, and kind of getting my chart cast, and looking at it and kind of trying to understand it. It was really confusing for a long time for me, actually, because it was the house system I was using, but that's technical blah blah. But it, switching as I continued to study, it began to make more sense. And I started to weave it in with my healing work. Actually, I had a particular client who was going through a very intense experience, and I was like, how about I pull up your chart? Because by that time,
what kind of healing work were you doing?
Depth hypnosis. Yeah. So by that time, I had been doing charts for family and friends for a long time. Like I would just like be looking at their stuff and helping them out, and kind of like, I don't know, I feel like a party trick half the time. It's like, how do you know all that? I'm like, it's right here. But I was like, perhaps would you be open to me looking at your chart and bringing that piece into this work together? Because I think it might give us some information that'll be very helpful. And it turned out she was going through a very intense Pluto transit. Wow. And so it was very helpful to start weaving in this, or holding that framework in my mind as I was helping my clients. But then it just became more and more of a passion to just have that be the lead, right? Yeah. The astrology, and then the healing work comes within that container of an astrology consult, rather than the other way around.
And you had a season of your life where you were a doula Were you a home birth midwife? Were you
Yes,
full on midwife?
I'm a trained home birth midwife. I was a birth worker for over a decade and did a lot of prenatal, birth, postpartum, placenta work, all kinds of
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
I love
but
that.
then I hit perimenopause and my body could not be on call anymore. And that's honestly when I started tuning into the moon again from a different perspective, because as I lost my menstrual cycle, I was feeling kooky, like I'm like,
Yes.
where's my anchor? Where's that like
Mhm.
rhythm? It's gone in my body. And so I started to really attune myself to the rhythm of the moon and specifically just the phases, right?
Right.
Not even like the moon signs. It was just new moon, waxing moon, full moon, waning moon, right? Like, and that I'm like, okay, this is my anchor. This is my rhythm. And that helped me
I
because
love that.
it mimics, a woman's natural hormone, biological woman, someone who's receiving that hormonal experience, whether they're receiving it naturally or chemically, but there is a certain thing that happens with estrogen and progesterone and that
Yes.
rhythm, right? And so the moon, the natural phases of the moon, there's a symmetry, there's a way that they parallel each other. So
Mhm. I remember learning about, I mean, when I was growing up learning about my cycle, it was like, you're going to have this for 40 years and it's going to suck and you're going to be miserable. And then like really learning nature is cyclical. And this
yes.
is a representation that I am cyclical. And when I learned that you were a birth worker, I was so excited. I mean, we had our kids at home, which was not the norm in my family. That was a very much like a dangerous thing to do. And um, no one ever called me reckless, but there was definitely what are you doing
Totally. I had the same thing.
vibration.
Yeah, I only have one child, but I had the same thing from certain individuals. It was like, I'm
What
like,
are you doing
train
and why?
midwives. It's fine. It's going to be great.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not catching him on my own, but I definitely like, but there is well, is it true that more babies are born on the full moon? Is that a real thing?
I will say that we were always busy around the full moon. With babies were born or not, there was a lot of activity,
So
where labor might start or maybe start and stop, babies might be born, but a lot of stuff comes up around the full moon for sure.
oh, I love that.
Yeah.
What are the parallels of like watching a woman become a mother? Like there's got to be parallels between that and like maturing in the knowing of your cycle. Like your moon cycle. Oh,
Yeah.
there's a better question here. I think there are parallels. I'm just curious what yours are. Like when you know your chart versus like when you're shifting from maiden to mother. It's a
Yeah. I
horrible
mean,
question.
knowing your chart is a beautiful thing. And I don't want to intimidate folks from like, because sometimes it's like, well, I don't know my chart. And, and it's like confusing. And then I can't work with the moon. And it's like, we can just work with the phases of the moon, right? Just really working with the energetic quality of dormancy, rekindling, growth, buildup, peak expression, which as we're recording now, we're recording in this like waxing full moon energy. And then we start to kind of let it go and we start to unwind, and it's the down regulation. It's kind of like, the nervous system even has a lot of
Totally.
similarities with the lunar
Yes.
cycle. And the breath, it's that inhale is the waxing, the peak moment, you can hold your breath for a moment, and exhale is the waning energy, and then that empty space at the bottom, new moon potential, right? So working with the understanding the phases of the moon, which you can see, this is the thing, you can kind of visually see those and don't have to get too analytical and precious about it. And that is available to everyone. And then for those who love their natal charts and really dig it, like understanding where the moon is doing its thing each day, right, helps you understand your own patterns, because the moon moves so quickly in astrology. It goes through the whole zodiac in less than a month. And so
Crazy.
it activates your entire chart.
She's so generous.
Every pattern in there is kissed by the moon. And then there's of course the transits that are, so there's a lot of layers, right? But the moon The moon is a great gateway into a deeper relationship with the cosmos.
I'm gonna have to go back and catch what you said, but it was every pattern is kissed by the moon. Well, I want that. Like that's
It's happening. It's happening.
one of the things that we've talked about in our home, especially over the last year and a half with COVID and all of the, uprising and racial tension. And it's so compounded.
Mhm.
And when things on a micro level feel really heavy, one of the tools that my husband uses is he gets out his telescope. And for him, it's like when this incarnation, when this time and space is heavy, I have to be reminded that I am a part of the macro as well. And so we will watch those videos where you start at one point in Earth and you zoom out and then you zoom out and then you're this tiny dot in a galaxy and then the galaxy's a tiny dot. And there is something really symmetrical and soothing about knowing that we aren't actually the center.
No, that's beautiful. And that really speaks to the energetic quality of the moon that we're recording this under, because it's a full moon in Pisces. And that means the sun is in Virgo. And so this Virgo Pisces axis in everybody's chart is a place where we have this kind of mundane day to day, our lives, all the details of our lives and how we organize them and how we embody them. And that's the Virgo piece. And then we have the larger macro cosmic collective unconscious bigness that is Pisces that we're trying to somehow channel.
Encapsulate.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It is in everyone's chart, this Virgo Pisces axis. It's being activated by today's full moon in a major way. So that's beautiful. I love that he pulls out his telescope.
Yeah.
Man after my own heart. I miss
Totally.
my dark skies of the Central Coast. That is for sure. I just moved, my friend. So it's an adjustment for sure.
Well, and I think that that's when things feel like they're in flux. There is to me, a lot of comfort in knowing that I'm not in charge of the moon. I'm not in charge of her phases. I'm the recipient. I get to be a witness. I get to be a part of it, but that I'm not in control. There is a reminder every night when I look up, and I have been a lover of the moon since I was a kid. I could not I just was so enchanted.
She's enchanted. How could you not be enchanted by the moon? I mean, this is the other thing about the moon, because the moon is always changing, always looking a little bit different, moving into a different sign every 2.5 days. It reminds us that it's only a phase. It's only a moment. Like whatever is pressing on you, it's going to pass. You might encounter it again, but from a different perspective, right? It's a spiral.
That's learning in a labyrinth, right?
Yeah, I always think of that spiral energy rather than just a circle, because we are moving in many, directions and dimensions, it's not just repeating like a record, stuck on the same groove kind of thing.
I remember when I was it was before my first son was born, and we did a birthing from within class. Mm-hmm. And we talked about, going into the center of a labyrinth, and that's where you're going to birth. And then it can take 3 years to walk your way out. But most of us are going to go back to the center a couple times. And I remember, yes.
I know what you're talking. I know birthing from within. I've studied.
Yes. And it was, what was so interesting, Mike really wanted to have other couples. He was really interested in meeting other dads in this birthing from within class, and that it was only us and another couple, and it ended up being a gay couple in our birthing from within class. And so he never got to meet the dads. He was like, what the heck is going on? It's I think this is your birthing from within experience as well. You get to trust your own fatherhood. Your parenthood is completely yours as well. And we talked about the moon a lot in this birthing from within class. And I remember I was still kind of on the cusp. Home birth was still, I couldn't quite believe I was doing it, even though it was the right thing for me. But I remember feeling a lot of peace with these phases. I remember a lot of peace and learning in a spiral, that I didn't have to linearly, if that's a word, get it right. And I think that a lot of the women that I work with are, high achieving. They have the to-do list. They have all the things that need to get done. And it's a reminder of cycles. It's a reminder that you're not doing it wrong. You're just in another phase.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the moon is, it's a really great pulse, but there are other cosmic cycles, big ones, right, that are happening. And there's also different cosmic cycles that you encounter at certain times in your life as well. So there is a really interesting process of maturation and evolution that is activated through your natal chart by this kind of timing of these celestial cycles. So
cool.
and then the moon is just that everyday pulse, right? And the energy, it just really helps you understand the moon. You can really get the mood and kind of the weather, of a real basic weather report is the moon, astrologically speaking.
Oh my God, I love that. And that leads in, well, we'll talk about where they can hear you and all those things, because that was such a beautiful segue though.
I know
I am curious with charts, like if you're becoming friends with someone, do you run their chart? Like, so if I meet someone for the first time, I'm going to Google them. Like I want to know who if I've got a new client, I want to know a little bit more about them. Do you ever just like chart someone?
Well, I have to get their information to chart them. I can't, you know what I mean? I got to know where they were born and what time. So I only chart you if you're interesting. So. And if I'm not interested, I don't need more information, although maybe the information would confirm why I'm not interested, right?
Sure.
But, certainly when I feel a strong connection with anyone, it's always interesting to look at the chart and then see where the two charts meet up and what kind of like little activations are happening in the chart, like what planets might be conjunct or, things like that, or different tensions or energy flows that might be activated through the planets coming together through looking at both charts. So.
Oh, I love that. What about, so I know you recently moved. Did you move based on your chart? Do you believe in that, where you plan trips at certain times, or?
Yeah, I did not. I moved because I have family up here in the Pacific Northwest. And actually what's interesting is the line that I'm on. So astrocartography is what you're speaking of. It's very similar to the lines I've lived on for a really long time, because it's just, I'm in the same is it longitude or latitude? I always forget of where I was before. I'm just a little more to the west. So there's a kind of like a crossover between two planets here that I couldn't activate at my old location. But in general, I'm still on my Jupiter line. So
interesting.
But I mean, I am not that is not an area of specialty for me, but it is an area of interest. And I'm always learning more. I'm an eternal student. So
totally. Me too.
Astrocartography is pretty cool.
I just wrote that down. I've never heard of that phrasing even before, and now I'm gonna nerd out on it. And I know those of you watching who are nerds like me are like, what did you say? It's astrocartography, as though we needed one more thing to Google, but this one is like at the top of my list now.
It's hard to figure out though by Googling. Like it's, there's a lot of, again, this is the thing about astrology. First of all, it's amazing that it's getting so much press and so quote mainstream at this time, in a certain way. That's a beautiful thing, and that's interesting, right?
What have you noticed, like the last 10 years?
Yeah, it's trending. It's really trending. I mean, I think it's this younger generation of astrologers that's coming up, and they're ability to work like certain apps and things like that, just make it more accessible. However, anybody can say they're an astrologer.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a lot of really negative or overly optimistic, honestly, like just really strange interpretations. So you really want to be discerning and only follow or listen to someone that you can feel a true resonance with, not a like pie in the sky resonance, but like there's something in this writing or speaking or whatever that's landing in my system and it feels right. Like, and look and ask them, like, where have you studied? Who have you studied with? If that's important to you, and it's just, there's a lot of astrology out there. So you got to be careful what you read. And to the point of astrocartography, it can just be very confusing, right? When you Google something like that, you're like, right? So
yes, I mean, even that phrase now, I'm like, once we hit stop recording, I'm gonna be like, okay, what now? But I think that it matters, like to your point, it's like an energy healer. Anybody can call themselves anything. if someone was going, in addition to working with you, what should people be looking out for? What is, I know you said there's a resonance, but is there like a hierarchy in the astrology world? Is there like a school? Is there a program? Like,
there's a lot of different programs and a lot of different schools. And honestly, there's a lot of different styles of astrology. I'm kind of a hybrid. I was reading on your website about the hybrid. You work with that word, right? And which is resonates with me because I consider myself to be a pragmatic mystic.
Totally. I love that.
And that's also Virgo Pisces, my friends. That's the pragmatic Virgo to-do list, right? Got to get stuff done. Mystic, woo, Pisces vibe. Okay. So in your chart, that's your pragmatic mystic axis.
So sexy.
So there's so many different types of astrology and schools of astrology and things like that. And I mean, I haven't completed a school myself. I have done a lot of my own studies. I jumped into like advanced studies several years ago. I reached out to a teacher whose name is Kelly Surtees, who I highly recommend. She's one of my very favorite astrology teachers ever. She's amazing. Any class that she offers is going to be very, very solid, rock solid. And so I kind of am a hybrid where I really do rely on a lot of traditional astrology and rulership and certain ways of considering the chart, right? But I'm also very open to listening to the evolutionary astrologers or listening to the shamanic astrologers or listening, just to kind of like, oh, that's interesting. That's a cool way to kind of evolve or think beyond, because we are, everything grows and evolves, right, over time. But there is
hopefully. I don't know that that's a guarantee all the time. I think that maybe I'm pessimistic.
Nature shows us that.
True. Yes. Nature, I feel reliable with that. I think I get more hung up when it's like humans who aren't growing.
Well, we block our own growing because we're afraid. Because you have to work into the unknown to grow. And that's scary. I mean, moving was scary and intense, even though it was a kind of known factor. It's still a huge unknown. And it took me a long time to make the decision, even though I kind of knew the decision months before I did it.
Oh.
And I don't even know that it's the quote where I'm going to stay, but I'm not going to say it was a wrong decision.
Yeah. Well, we talk about in my program too about the decision and then the physiology that has to happen very rarely happen at the same time. It's like when you're ready to do something versus like when your body will actually do it.
Yeah.
They usually don't show up at the same time. Like we still live in time and space. Even if you intellectually or astrologically understand something, you still have to go through it. Even though you're like, I know where I'm moving, you still have to pack your stuff.
Listen,
you still have to actually go.
Our bodies are still pretty primal, right? Like even though our minds and our minds and our brains and our technology is evolving at a very rapid pace, we could speak about the astrology of that, but our bodies are still very, very primal, and all the hormonal sequencing and that time-space continuum, like the entropy that happens in the body on this planet, it's just real. So.
And it's very bizarre. I mean, my middle son is my philosopher, and he will say things like, isn't it just weird that we're here? Yes. Like, yes, it is. It's the weirdest thing I have ever done, being human. It's the weirdest shit that's ever happened.
The weirdest thing I've ever done, being human. I can relate.
It's the weirdest thing I've ever done. But there's also looking to nature and looking to cycles and looking to the rhythm. So like right now in the Midwest, this is when people fall in love with the Midwest. She's so beautiful right now. Like the colors are starting to change. The mornings are cool. It is perfect bonfire weather where you want to be outside, and the bugs are starting to go away. She's very seductive this time of year, but it's this reminder of the cycles are going to happen. And what's the phrase, let go or be dragged, right? Like that there's something very real. And I think when we have the macro of the cosmos and the micro of the tree in my backyard, and we can remember that they play together and we fit within that, like we're part of that design. That's crazy making to me. Like we're so magical.
We are celestial terrestrials. That's like my favorite thing to think about lately. Because I moved now where all these trees are, and so I'm feeling very terrestrial with the trees. And I am where I was living before, I was at the ocean's edge, and so I got that horizon line, and I had that dark sky, and it was very celestial, right? And so now I'm just kind of bridging those. I think we're always bridging those in our bodies, which is our connection with the cosmos, with what is beyond the bigger picture, the macro, and the time-space continuum of being a terrestrial being here on Earth at this time, where, by the way, we're in the cosmic conversation. It's not like Earth is watching the movie. Earth is part of the dance. We wouldn't even have eclipses in the lunar cycle if we weren't on Earth. That's how we can see them. So Earth is part of it. It affects the planetary, movement. We're part of that, right? And all the humans and everything that's on this planet energetically, if you think about what we're putting into the vibrational field of the Earth, it's affecting the rest of our solar system, I would say, and probably beyond. But I'm a pragmatic mystic, so there's the mystic in me.
But I think that that speaks so eloquently. Like that will be one of your quotes. We're celestial terrestrials. I'm never going to get over that. It's so beautifully hybrid.
I'm sure someone else has said it. I'm sure I'm not the only one that has this.
Well, you'll be quoted here.
Us astrologers, especially sky watching astrologers. Now, that's the other thing, is like a lot of times you can get so cerebral and intellectual with the charts and the books, and it's like all this like flat thing you're looking at, and you have to, that's one thing living on the coast and watching the sky really deepened in me, is that like multidimensionality of it. So like I would watch the planets and watch the ecliptic, and I would think about the aspects, and I would look at the aspects, and I would consider myself in the equation. So I brought it out rather than having it be two-dimensional on a screen. And so sky watching astrologers, we all know that we're celestial terrestrial.
I love that. That is something that we as a family do. Like telescopes it's a big deal. And it's fun to, like, Theo, my middle, the philosopher that I was talking about, is literally doing an exercise right now over the next month where he has a moon journal for one of his courses at school. I know, isn't that fantastic? He just dropped the packet on the counter this morning, and I was like, yes, that's so great. I'm talking to Kristina today. Like, cool. I wear my moonstone. Aww. And he definitely is like, we already are moon watchers. There is something. I took an astronomy class when I was in college, and we had what are they called when you're indoors?
The planetarium.
Yes, thank you. But it was an 8 a.m. lab, and so you get all these college kids at 8 a.m. in a planetarium, and inevitably kids were falling asleep. And he had a flashlight, right? And he would just shine it like in your face if you fell asleep. But I never fell asleep. I was just completely enchanted to be able to see what this would look like from someplace else, or like he would take us through these phases, and I was like, how is this happens every single day? Like it's amazing to me. I still have a lot of questions about God. I still have a lot of questions about what that means, but the ineffability of the cosmos it's comforting and challenging at the same time, right? That hybrid.
Total hybrid.
Yeah. Yes. Total hybrid. So I do want to give people an opportunity to like connect with you, because you have this, to me, it's such a depth of experience in being human and being divine, right? Like when you're bringing babies into the world, that's a different way of life. When you are connecting people with the energy work that you did, when you're connecting people with charts, like you bring such a richness and such a depth to who you serve. And I would love for people to be able to access you. Like, how do they get a hold of you? How can they get all of your stuff?
My website is the best place in getting on my mailing list. So it is just my name, KristinaWingeier.com. And I'm sure that Heidi will put it somewhere.
Yep, it'll be in all the notes.
That last name is hard to spell. So that is where everything is. And then I do have offerings that kind of run all the time. My moon club is open right around every new moon to invite in new members. And that is a place to come if you're a moon lover and you want to have a live call with us and receive weekly kind of updates and tarot and things like that. I do sessions, of course, consult work, all kinds of consult work. I teach different types of things, different programs, as I'm called to do so. I teach a lot about Venus, actually the Venus cycle, in a program I've run for a couple of years called Goddess Codes. And I also have a cosmic weather channel, which is for really the folks who want to know every day, like a little energetic download. It's a Voxer channel that you subscribe to. And I send out an audio every day I go through every major aspect that's happening. And I do it in my way of like, I speak the names and the aspects, but then I'm a translator. That's the thing, that I'm a translator. And it's funny, I was remembering yesterday when I was walking around the lake, you know, when you're young and it's like, what superpower do you want kind of thing. And I always wanted this ability to be able to speak and understand any language. I wanted that. I wanted to be able to go anywhere and like understand. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. I'm a translator, because like, that's kind of like about translation, right? So.
Oh, I love that.
And, you know, I love holding space for transition, transformation, it really is that like threshold crossing that we're all doing all the time. And motherhood is one threshold, right? That some people cross. Parenthood, as a culture, Western culture, we don't have a lot of authentic support around different rites of passage in our communities. Like there are some communities that hold that better than others, and there's certainly a Hallmark version of it all. But there is this thing about different thresholds and passages that we go through in our lives that again, kind of circling around to what I was speaking about earlier with like the astrology, certain timing that happens that are different invitations to step into new parts of yourself and to evolve. So I just love that the dynamism and the always the healing and possibility and potential that's available when you show up to the mystery of your own life, right? And then you actually can, again, work with it in a very tangible, pragmatic way. It's that holding both and of, you know, embodying it, living your life, but making space for the bigger mystery and the larger evolution that's happening in your
That. I've got my lawn people here. I don't know if you can hear that, but I'm like muting myself. So it's okay. I love the showing up to the mystery of your life. I mean, I think that's it's so beautifully said. And I think we call it the sacred crossroads inside Lead From Within, where it's like the not that, but now what? And what do you do in you said it so beautifully around like the thresholds and the rites of passage. And what I have planned for my daughter around her first moon and her, you know, motherhood if she chooses. And like there's so many things that will be different because those rites of passage are to me, they're so important. And I think there's a whole group of us, especially inside Lead From Within, where we talk about that loss of like, what if someone had held your hand through it instead of giving you a pamphlet? What if someone had, like the way that I explained menstrual cycles to my older boys as they were learning, they're like, no fair, Ivy gets to have a moon cycle. And I was like, I did something right if my boys are like,
that's cool,
super jealous of a moon cycle. Like I'm like, well, you have your own cycles as well. It's just, it will be different. It won't be monthly the same way. And them looking at me like, well, do you have a cycle that's with the moon? And I'm like, how the heck did you get here otherwise? But what happens when we can have those rites of passage? And I think specifically for the women that I serve, friends, like working with Kristina when you aren't sure, it can be such a beautiful companion piece to the work that we're doing inside Lead From Within, where you're like, it's just another support. It's another person who can be a witness to your journey and also be a translator of a piece of you that you may not have access to yet. And it's within the safety and I think the sanctity of the work that you're doing. I just think everybody should work with you. I
Oh,
think
you're sweet. You're sweet. I will say that, you know, the bigger cosmic cycles, we don't have time to talk about like the astrology of 2021. Like that's, that's what I do in Moon Club and what I do in the Cosmic Weather Channel and different things, my newsletter, right?
yes, which
But
are
like,
so beautifully done. I just got one, I think it was today.
yeah,
Get her newsletters. They're so well, she
I usually
doesn't just
send
like
them on
put
Moon
out
Day.
crap. Yeah,
Thank you.
it's
But
it's
like
good stuff.
some of these cosmic cycles are creating a lot of pressure on your charts, right? And you're like, what is going on? And so it's understanding the the invitation of the pressure and also
Mm,
time frames. The thing about an astrologer, what we can do is we can give you time frames because we can look and see how long and when it will be reactivated, maybe, right? And that helps you, like, because sometimes when you're in the middle of a big stressful time, it's like it's going to go on forever,
right.
And
Or when you're in labor.
right. But the right astrologer, I remember when an astrologer told me back in the day, they're like, well, your progressed moon's going through Scorpio. You probably feel like you're dying. And I'm like, oh my God, I do feel like I'm dying.
Yeah.
It was like so helpful to just hear that from that person. She's like, 3 more months.
Validating.
3 more months, and then the progressed moon's in Sag. It'll be a whole different experience. And it did shift. So that's
Yes.
the thing, that it may not shift as quickly as the moon, some of these bigger cycles, but you're still going to understand a time frame and an opportunity period
Right.
through having somebody kind of transpose that cosmic whatever transits onto your natal placements. So that can be very
Yes.
helpful.
Well, and I think, at least for me, and I consider myself a very sensitive person. Like, I'm sensitive to everything.
Join the club.
I think the women that I work with they show up to the world. What I've said to my husband is like, sometimes I just feel like I'm sunburned and I can't get out of the sun. Like, I just feel it all so much.
I get it.
And and I also, like, in human design, I have an open head and an open like root. And so there's always
Yes.
and so it's like discerning what pressure is mine, discerning and having, like, knowing my own chart has been a relief that I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
That in fact, yes, this makes sense. And there was a period of time when my kids, and I had 3 kids in 4 years. It was a lot of like, who am I and all of the things. And I relied very heavily on my chart readings with an astrologer. She's now retired, but I miss her. But it was so refreshing. I felt so seen on such a fundamental, like, fibrous level. And there was something really healing about self-reverence. Like, that's one of the tenets of Lead From Within, is self-reverence. And I think having someone like you in their life, it will enhance the self-reverence. It will give you a different lens. It's like like you're inviting someone into your home and they're like, did you know that there's like a secret panel behind this painting? You're like, oh wow, there's a whole other room.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's sacred geometry that's wired into your being. I think of it as your celestial DNA, and it's some charts are harder than others, but everybody has challenges. I have a challenging chart. I have clients with super challenging charts. I see clients who have these like what seem to be easy breezy charts, but like life isn't always easy breezy. It's very unique. Each chart is very unique and really it's sacred geometry. So
that when I was in massage school and I was like learning about the endocrine system, it's similar to how I felt when I was learning about astrology. Like, everyone should know how the endocrine system works and everyone should know their chart.
I agree.
You need the micro and the macro.
I concur. Yes. We're not taught a lot about our bodies at all. And there's just a field of medical astrology, which is a whole nother.
I got goosebumps.
Pretty cool.
Damn, I have to cancel the rest of my day. I have so much to research and like go to the library and nerd out. So, okay, so we end every episode with Heidi's Big Five, and you don't know what these questions are.
No, I don't.
And I never reveal it, and it's so fun. But what I love is it gives people a glimpse into who you are. So I'm gonna move my notes. Okay, so answer this just however intuitively it shows up for you. Just complete the sentence of leadership is
sourced from the heart.
Ooh. See, you never know what people are going to say. I love that. Leadership is sourced from the heart. That's like a dream. That's what I would love to see in the world. Okay, the most recent life-changing book that you've read.
Gosh, I read a lot.
Are you the one that has like 12 books on your nightstand, or do you not have books in your bedroom?
I got books everywhere, girl.
Totally, me too, I know.
Things that's unpacked.
A desk and your books.
Or just like come in and they say you have no couch, but you have books piled everywhere.
You can sit on books.
Book. I've been reading a lot of fiction, but has any of it been life-changing?
Sometimes that's okay too. If you were going to recommend like one book that you've read in your lifetime where it's like everyone should have a copy of this. Yeah.
Gosh, you've stumped me. This is the problem with someone having so many books. Can we come back to that question?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
One of the books
here for a minute and then it'll.
Yeah, no, I love that. You can, well, if you're reading so many, sometimes it's hard to Rolodex all of those. I know. I read The Alchemist when I was 19. You read The Alchemist?
I didn't read it. No, I haven't read it. She's like, read the book.
That was one that I would think everyone should read. That one and My Grandmother's Hands, I think, should be required reading.
Yes, they're both. I have My Grandmother's Hands, and I also am a person who kind of book read. I'm a open and like Oracle.
For sure.
So I don't always read books all the way through. I have like hundreds of books, but I don't always read them all the way through. So
what kind of what kind of book do you use as an Oracle style?
Anything that's out, right? Like any book. Like
Are you kidding? Oh, really? You're not just even doing like personal development books. You're just like pulling fiction and doing Oracle?
Sure, why not? Like any book
I've never done it.
Like I'm very like, I just drawn to books, covers and topics. And then I just like to pull things out. Books that I've read before that I love. Sometimes I'll pull out and like open and see like what passage is being highlighted. I really love books, and this is why I feel embarrassed that I can't answer your question. Because I love that who's like, there is no one book. That's
like, you silly girl. Why would you?
I'm just going to say what's coming to my mind for whatever reason is, and I probably couldn't even get into the details of this novel, but it's the only thing that's surfacing, and it's The God of Small Things, which is a novel that I read many years ago, and I remember had a very profound effect on me. Now it's very sad.
Yeah.
It moves through backwards and forwards in time. I really love that in novels where you move backward and forward in time. Arundhati Roy is the author of that book. And I remember, for whatever reason, that's what's popping to my mind. Now that
needs that book.
That may not be the book I would recommend, like the book I would recommend everyone to read. And I haven't read it for a really long time. And I've been actually reading a bunch of pulp lately. So I don't want to because I'm just like, I just need to kind of, go on vacation to Nantucket. Okay.
Yes, I understand. There's a bookstore in our town. If you ever get to the Midwest, I'm going to take you to it. It's called Foxden Books. Shout out to Foxden here in River Falls. It is the most magical place on earth. And I walked in and I was embarrassed because I was like, James, I can't read anything heavy. I'm done. I need a reprieve. And he's like, oh, you're looking for chick lit? And I was like,
that's what they call it.
I was like, I don't want you to judge me and think I'm shallow, but like, I loved Adriana Trigiani. And he's like, no, I got it. And this woman was in the bookstore and she's like, okay, now you need Eleanor Oliphant is just fine. Like she gave me like 3 different versions. Oh gosh, I have can you hear this lawnmower right now? It's like right outside my window.
No, okay, it's always like louder for you than it is for us.
It's insane. But no, chick lit, I think is I was embarrassed though, because James and Heather, who own this bookstore, are like the smarties of the smarty, and they know every book in their bookstore. But there is something about having a reprieve in Nantucket. Like we do.
I'm
I
telling
need to
you.
know it's going to turn out okay.
It's nice. And now I'm reading a novel called The Gold Diggers, and I cannot remember the author's name right now, but it's actually really beautiful and not chick litty at all. It's much more about
Liddy.
the Indian diaspora experience.
Beautiful.
Which my only child is her father, my ex-husband, his family's from India. So I've read and Arundhati Roy, like I read a lot of novels by Indian authors. I'm very drawn to understanding that experience.
I love that.
So
no, I see, you never know where these questions will go.
And I don't think I have one book. I'm sorry.
And you don't have to.
It's terrible.
No, it's wonderful. And it's going to resonate with all of the people who are like exactly the same. And I'd never considered using fiction as an oracle style. I have always done it with like self-help and personal development. And so now that's what I needed.
Oh yeah, we gotta have like poetry too. Poetry's great oracle.
I know.
Poetry.
Yeah, Mary Oliver.
You know what? There's a book I'll recommend that I love. The Radiant Sutras, translated by Lauren Roche. I think that's how you say his name. That's actually, it is so beautiful. His translation of these very ancient Vedic, I believe, texts.
Yeah. Is it Radiant or Radiance?
The Radiance Sutras. I love that. That is beautiful. I love it. Okay, that's my recommendation. plus a novel.
We got there.
In case you want to cry.
I do. Some days you need that. Well, you could read my chart and let me know when I need to cry. Okay, are you a night owl or an early bird?
I am a seasonal bird. That I in earlier parts of my life, I was very much a night owl, and then I became a early morning bird. But it really just kind of depends on the season. I become more of an early bird in the winter because I go to bed earlier. And in the summertime, I'm more of a night owl.
Love it.
So,
love it.
Yeah, I'm both.
So I know the answer to this, but I'm always curious what people say. Do you believe in magic?
Well, yeah.
What is it?
Magic is, to me, magic is a spark. Like it's this, I guess this is what I say. Fundamentally, I'm an animist. I believe everything is alive.
Yes.
Okay, so I go out on my walks. I talk to plants. I talk to the birds. I talk to the squirrels. I'm open to receiving a message. It's not like every single thing I see is like guiding me, but like I'm walking with an openness to have an experience. And sometimes I do ask for signs, and to me, that connection, that spark is very magical. So I don't practice magic in a way that you might think, but I love Harry Potter. And I love the Chronicles of Narnia when I was young.
Of course.
I believe in magic. So
if you end up coming to the Spock's Den books, you can have a wand experience where Heather will facilitate the wand choosing you. And it's a rite of passage here in town. It's like they have magic school. They haven't had it in a year because of COVID, but they put on like magic. I love that. I'm a total animist as well. Okay, so the final question. Okay. What would you like the legacy of our time together here to be? So if someone is like, you need to go check out this conversation between Heidi and Kristina, what do you want the legacy of that to be? What would they say?
I want anyone to just remember that it's like that we go these phases, right? That there's waves that rise and waves that fall. Because I think that it's so easy to feel so boxed in and so stuck and so overwhelmed. And especially now, but I mean, even before now, and this time that we're living in when there's so much information streaming in and we're overflowed, we're flooded, and you can feel very trapped and very stuck. And I think that understanding of cycles and rhythm and waves rising and waves falling helps. It helps me. And so I think that would be helpful and a good kind of legacy piece. Just remember the cycles are at play, energies rising and falling. It's not always, if you're having a particularly hard time, it's not always going to be this way.
Yeah. I love that.
Someone who has really hard times, sometimes I go very deeply into everything, including the dark places in myself. That's just who I am. And I always come back up for air.
I know. I think that's really beautifully said. And I never quite know what people are going to say. So thank you feels like such a beautiful bookend to close on. And I'm so grateful for your time. I know.
I'm grateful for you to invite me to have this conversation.
Oh my gosh,
I interrupted you. I'm sorry, that's rude.
Oh no, it was like a no-brainer as I was designing the season. The season is really about powerful women and what are they doing and how are they using what is obvious about them to have it be like a gift that they also give away. So like the gift that you have received, how are you also serving with it? And I think you do it really beautifully, where you have this gift and you have a way about you. And you know that I've like you have to do a podcast and people have to hear your voice, and like you have a soothing presence. And I think I'm grateful that you share that with other people. And that's what the season was about. And so you were on the short list, man. It was like, I reached out and I was like, oh, I wonder if she'd say yes. Because I've received your stuff in the mail for a long time and then joined the Moon Club. And sometimes it works for me to get there on a new moon and sometimes it doesn't. I'm like, shit, I want to get to like everyone. But I appreciate you saying yes. And friends, if you are at all, I know there's a spark that if you've watched this far, then you need to just hook up with her. You need to just give her a call or like get on her mailing list and experience this type of work. It really is life enhancing. I don't think sometimes we're looking for change, but I think sometimes we're looking for enhancement, and this type of work is life enhancing. So I'll have all of the ways you can connect with Kristina in the show notes. Otherwise, just look her up on social too and reach out. So thank you for your time today, Kristina. I really appreciate it. I know how valuable it is, and I know that moving and all of these things, it creates, it can make you tired. And so the fact that you're here is like, I consider it a real gift.
Thank you. Thank you, Heidi. I really appreciate the conversation and the connection and the introduction. Nice to meet y'all out there who might be watching this, and maybe I'll see you in the Zoom room someday.
Thank you. So sit tight for just a second. So friends, thank you so much for your time today. I know that you have so many choices. I know that there's, like we've talked about, the flood of information, but we really do appreciate the investment of your time. And as you need support, we're here. And I can't wait to see you on our next episode of Strategies of Soul. We'll see you soon. Be well.